want to do, whether it be in math or science, and just all the outstanding opportunities that there are for you. So what are the possibilities? What are the possible career paths that you could choose in science? And since we're here talking about science, I wanted to talk to you about how we use science in developing a drug. And then lastly, just share with you some lessons that I've learned through the years and different experiences that I've had and perhaps how I came to choose this degree in science. So what has my career path been? Well, it's been kind of everywhere. We were talking this morning at breakfast, and my husband thinks that I have attention deficit disorder because I tend to change careers about every 5 years. And as you decide what you're going to do, my parents always told me that you have to have passion, and you have to love what you're doing, and every day get excited, get up, do it, and really have a lot of fun. So as I was thinking about what I wanted to do, that was always something that really drove me. I have my bachelor's degree in pharmacy, so I am a licensed pharmacist still in the state of Pennsylvania, and that was fun. But I realized as I practiced pharmacy that I could do a little bit more. And I had the opportunity when I was an undergraduate to work on a transplant team with one of the faculty members and learn a little bit about that patient population and the difference you can really make by doing research and helping patients. So that forced me, and it really excited me, to pursue a graduate degree in pharmaceutical sciences. And the pharmaceutical sciences are the sciences that are really used to develop drugs from the basic science perspective. And I'm going to share with you some of those different opportunities. And so I started very early on in my career in a specialty area called pharmacokinetics, where I study, once you give a drug, how is it absorbed, how is it distributed, how is it metabolized, and then finally eliminated from the body. And from there, I have built tremendous different career paths, and some of them are listed here on this slide. You know, I started very early just working in a pharmaceutical company as a basic pharmacokineticist, really understanding how drugs are metabolized in the body. I moved from working in the non-clinical area to working with people and doing clinical pharmacokinetics and clinical trials to help drugs get registered. Then I moved from working in the ethical pharmaceutical business to working in a contract research organization. And what contract research organizations do is work with the big pharmaceutical companies, do projects to help them move the drug development process along. After that, I came back to the ethical industry. I worked for Johnson & Johnson, which I'm sure many of you use their products, and have held many different roles within Johnson & Johnson. You know, first starting as a toxicologist, which I never had any training in, so all of a sudden I found myself going back to school and learning a lot about toxicology. Then moving to regulatory affairs and negotiating on behalf of the company with worldwide health authorities to get our drugs approved and get the appropriate labeling. And then most recently, moving to becoming responsible for a whole team that develops a drug, taking it from the early discovery phase all the way through treating patients, curing patients, and registering it. And I'll tell you, I have worked in this industry for nearly 20 years. I've worked on more than 100 compounds, and this compound I'm currently working on is the first compound that's made it the whole way through. So it's really exciting and really challenging to bring a drug to market. So that's a little bit about my career, and it really started with that little pearl of advice from my parents on you have to do something that you really love and you're excited about. And I can tell you after 20 years I'm still excited about what I do and really enjoy going to work every day and facing the challenges that I do. So let's talk a little bit about how you develop a drug. I want you to learn a little bit today and get you excited about pharmaceutical sciences. And I have a funny story for you. My daughters were in first grade. I have twin girls, they're 13. And I got a call from the principal. He wanted to see me. So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what did these girls do? It's only the third day of school. Well, I guess they were going around and introducing everybody, and they asked, you know, what your parents do. And my daughter said, they do drugs. And so it was quite comical when I got called in to talk to the principal because he really wanted to know what I did. And we had to have an interesting conversation. So please, don't go home and tell your parents you learned how to make drugs here. We're just going to talk about the process. So it was quite interesting. Just out of curiosity, how How many years do you think that it takes to take a drug from when you first discover it in a test tube to making it to the market? Does anybody have a guess? 20 years? On average, it takes about 10 to 12 years. Does anybody know what it costs to bring a drug through the whole development process to get it to a market? Did I hear 50 million? 50 million? It's closer to 700 million right now to take a drug from its early discovery phase the whole way through to the market. And everybody wants to know, why does it cost so much for prescriptions? Well, that's why, because it takes a long time to establish that a drug is really safe and efficacious and acceptable. So little history on drug development. And I'll tell you, as you work and you decide what you want to do, you're never going to work in isolation. One of the important things as you pick a career in science and math and any of the fields is you have to work on teams. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about the teams that develop drugs. But before we do that, just give you a real high level of how the process works. First, you have a discovery phase, and that's the early phase over here on the graph. And you have chemists, you have biologists that are looking at screening different cells, working on synthesizing different compounds to see how they work. Then once you get something that looks fairly promising, you take that agent and you start to experiment and see what its safety and tolerability would look like. And then you move to that first interesting day, the day you give the compounds for the first time to humans. And you file an investigational drug application with the FDA to allow you to do that. So you start out first in a very narrow population, maybe 25 to 50 healthy normal volunteers, and make sure that the drug is safe. Then you move to the next stage, where you move to a very small set of patients that maybe have the disease. 200-300 patients, it's called phase 2. And again, you're testing the safety, the efficacy, and trying to determine what is the effective dose to move the drug into the clinic. And then once you've established that, you move into the larger scale, phase 3 trials that involve thousands of patients. Typically, when you file a new drug application, you study the drug in 3,000 to 4,000 patients, and you do these studies all over the world, so you get very diverse information from all over, and then you get that drug approved. And that's the best thing that can possibly happen in your career, to be able to take something the whole way through that's going to help patients. And Casey talked a little bit about, I'm working in the anti-infective area. Has anyone recently heard in the news about MRSA, MRSA? See a lot of hands going up. So I'm working on new drugs, new agents to combat methicillin-resistant staph. And it's really becoming a big problem, especially not only in the hospitals where it's been for many years, but also coming into the community. So another little funny story, my sister calls me last year and says, my nephew was out golfing in his golf team, and it looked like he had a spider bite in his arm. So, the aunt says, just put hydrocortisone cream on it. So like 2 or 3 hours later, she calls me back and she says, this thing has gone from, the size of a pencil to the size of a baseball. I said, well, now we have a problem. And lo and behold, my nephew ended up with an MRSA infection, ended up in the hospital for a week with 2 surgeries to debris it. And here I thought it was a spider bite. So, we're also trying to educate a little bit about MRSA infections and the different treatment options and how to prevent it. So when you have the chance to work on a drug that that can really impact and change the course of therapy, it's really a lot of fun. So how do we go about doing that? Well, we have compound development teams. And I want to tell you a little bit about the members of a compound development team and talk a little bit about their scientific and math backgrounds and what brought them there. My current role is the compound development team leader. So I'm kind of the CEO of the company that runs this drug, getting it to market. And on my team, I have someone from regulatory affairs, someone from the ChemPharm organization, someone from project management, because I'm not the best manager, so I need someone to keep me on track, a clinical scientist, a preclinical expert, and someone in our commercial organization that's going to take the drug and tell me that I can sell it. So let's start first with the folks in our ChemPharm organization. They are the members of the team that decide how the drug is going to be synthesized, how it's going to be manufactured, and then how it's going to be put out there into the clinics. So they do all the testing for stability, compatibility, and get everything ready to go so that we know when we put the drug on the market that we have a stable product. So in the chem farm area, you can have scientists with training in biology, chemistry, mathematics, physical chemistry, all the different types of chemistry, organic chemistry to learn how to synthesize things. And a lot of really great people to make it happen. And once you're at the point where you have a drug in the clinic, everybody tends to forget about the important people that really know how to synthesize it and make it for our patients. Then we have our colleagues in clinical. Our colleagues in clinical are typically physicians that have different types of expertise. In my particular area, the clinicians on my team have anti-infective or antiviral training, and they're really the experts in looking at how you design the study. I'm sure in some of your science classes you've talked about designing studies, how you have to form a hypothesis, then design the experiment, conduct the experiment, analyze the data, and see if you've answered the right question. And that's exactly what we do with clinical trials. We set out a hypothesis that the drug is going to cure infections. We test it, we collect all the data, analyze it, and we see if we pick the right dose, if we pick the right regimen, and if we have a safe compound. And if all the answers to all that are yes, we go ahead and we file it. Also on my team are preclinical scientists, and the preclinical scientists cover a wide range of areas. They cover areas such as toxicology, pathology, pharmacokinetics, bioanalysis. So it's a very diverse group that really looks at all the information that we need to collect prior to going into humans so that we understand how the drug is metabolized. Can we measure it in the plasma? How is it broken down? So that's also another group of scientists. And the scientists in the preclinical area typically have training in toxicology, biology, pathology. So it's a very diverse group. And I used to sit on the toxicology teams, and I had to lead them. And I was not a trained toxicologist. And I think what you'll find in your careers and in life is it's a continuous learning process. So I spent some time in the toxicology area, and I used to have the pathologists. And pathologists are the ones that take like sections of tissue and they look at them under the microscope and they see if there are changes. And so the one time I'm sitting in my office and they're all looking in their microscopes and they said, "You have to come." So I come and there's 5 of them. And they all have 5 different opinions. So it's very hard because as scientists, you get an opinion and you have to bring everyone together to make a decision on how to move forward. Also on my team are my regulatory leaders, and I was a regulatory leader myself. And you have to have great negotiating skills, but you also have to be a very good scientist to understand what the issues are, because you need to articulate them around the world to the different health authorities. And it's a lot of fun. I've had the opportunity to go to health authority meetings in over 20 countries. Every country is different around the world. Every country has a different process on how they register drugs. So it's been a lot of fun doing that. But one of the most important players on our team are the commercial team. They're the group that are going to decide how the compound is going to be marketed, how it's going to be targeted to patients, how it's going to be targeted to physicians. And a lot of the people on the marketing team have degrees in business, marketing, finance. But even though that they're from the business side, they still have a basic understanding of the science, and they have to translate the science into business. Because at the end of the day, although it's fun, we need to make a profit for the organization. And I shared with you that I'm a pharmacist. I didn't tell you a lot about my background, but I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is a fairly large-sized city, but I grew up in a suburb. My parents did not have the opportunity to go to college, so I was the first one in our family that went to college. Very small town, very, very great family. So about 2 months ago, I had the opportunity to speak to the CEO of Johnson & Johnson. And I just thought to myself, here's this little girl from Natrona Heights, Pennsylvania. Who would ever think that she's in front of a CEO of a major Fortune 500 company asking him for $23 million so she could advance his program and trying to explain to him why we need to spend this money. So it truly shows that where you go and what you do in life, the possibilities are endless, and you just never know what you're going to do, what kind of opportunities are going to be presented to you and where you'll finally land. So I have shown you my career, and I talked a little bit about the diverse opportunities that are out there. You had the pleasure this morning of hearing some of the faculty here and their excitement and how glad they are to have you here. So academics is a potential. I interact with the FDA a lot. There's a lot of great government roles for scientists and mathematicians. You can work for contract organizations. You can be a consultant and share your knowledge and help others. And then there are many different industries. In my business, there's the traditional pharmaceutical companies, the large companies, but there are also many small biotechnology companies who are working on very targeted molecules, medical device companies, and then also there's the whole consumer side of the business in addition to the ethical pharmaceutical groups. So again, as you move into sciences, the opportunities that you have are so diverse, and you're doing the right thing today. You're here to learn about what all the different opportunities there are and all the different doors that you have to knock on. So how do I get there? We're here today, we're going to learn about science, but how do I start thinking about this and how do I bring it all together? Well, I really think, and even today with all the internet and the opportunity to search, you really need to research what all your career opportunities are. And you need to search for opportunities. You see that we have students here today that are helping with this conference. Well, it's an opportunity for them to learn how to organize a conference, to interact with scientists, and to grow their careers. And you have to be willing to take some risks. You have to experiment a little bit about what might work for you. And you might pick something, you do it, it might not be what you really enjoy. That's okay, because you're going to have basic science training and you're going to be able to move on to something else and pick a new career. So it's really important to start researching and understand what you might want to do. And you really need to start creating that network. You're here today, hopefully you'll meet some new friends, so you can build a kind of a network of peers with the same interests. You heard about the many professional societies for women in science, and that's a tremendous asset for you to reach out and talk to these women. You can find people in your community, but really don't be shy. If you're interested in something, ask someone about what they do. It would really excite them. They really want to share with you their experiences and help you move forward. And I really have to say, you need to dream. You need to believe in you. I remember when I was a second-year pharmacy student, I had to take microbiology. And microbiology is a lot of memorization. So for one exam, I'd have to learn 100 microorganisms, how to spell them correctly, and what diseases they created. And memorization is not my strong technique. So I went to see the professor, and I told him I'm really having problems with this. Can you give me some tips on how to get better in microbiology? And he said to me, you're never going to make it. You're going to fail. And you should probably think about changing majors. And I have to tell you, that was astounding for me, that somebody could tell me that I could not make it. And you know what? That just made me work harder. I turned around